You're listening to Dilaw na Kandila, English Filipino Horror Stories. Hello everyone, I'm Eric, but everybody calls me Sir Sig, a Filipino writer and horror story host. And this is Dilaw na Kandila Pinoy Komiks. On this channel, I share Filipino horror stories that I personally write, inspired by our culture, our beliefs, and the many mysterious stories that exist in the Philippines. I grew up hearing stories about ghosts, spirits, diwata, engkanto, and other creatures from our folklore, and this channel is my way of sharing those stories with all of you. Some of the stories you'll hear here are pure horror fiction that I wrote, but many of them are also real-life experiences sent by my followers directly to my Facebook page, Dilaw na Kandila Pinoy Komiks. I read their stories, write them into narrative form, and share them here so more people can hear about these strange and terrifying experiences. I also want to be honest with you. My English is not very good, so I use Edge Translator and AI voice to help me tell my stories in English. I hope you don't mind the AI voice, but I promise you that every story on this channel is written with effort, passion, and the goal of entertaining your mind. And maybe even giving your soul a little chill. So if you enjoy horror stories, mysteries, and tales inspired by Filipino culture and folklore, you're in the right place. Turn down the lights, relax, and listen carefully.
At last, I finally understand why Mom never got out of bed. When my siblings and I were born, Mom had to make a decision no parent should ever have to make. We were conjoined triplets. Only one of us could survive. She chose me. Dad could never accept that. In his mind, they never died. To him, he still had 3 living children. Maybe that's why he drowned himself in alcohol. He lost his job. Eventually, he moved out. He only showed up on my birthday because, according to him, it was their birthday too. When I turned 10, I had a pool party. Dad arrived carrying 3 gifts. He ignored the stares from everyone around him. Loudly, he said, "They haven't blown out the candles yet. Her sisters haven't done it." I forced a smile. After the cake blowing, I couldn't enjoy the party anymore. Something sat heavy in my chest, like a thorn that wouldn't come out. A creeping guilt. Why'd I live while my 2 siblings died? The party ended with me feeling completely detached. Therapy helped ease the guilt a little. But for Dad, it was never enough. He wanted me to suffer. One time he was drunk when he shoved me and whispered into my ear, "I wish it hadn't been you." The 2 girls who were with me quickly walked away, leaving me barely able to breathe in his presence. His clothes were filthy and he reeked of alcohol, but a part of me still loved him. A part of me still searched for a father figure. I tried to smile. "Dad," but he grabbed me. "Not even a little grief," he murmured, tightening his grip. I tried to pull away, but his hand clamped hard around my wrist. Tears streamed down his face. "I can hear them," he said. His foul breath brushed against my cheek. He dragged me toward the swimming pool until we stood at the edge. He leaned close, eyes wide, wearing a strained smile. "I can still hear them," he shouted. "And you're the reason they're gone. You forgot about them like they never existed. They were your sisters, your own blood." He laughed. I screamed and stumbled backward. Then he shoved me into the pool. "You're a bad child." Thankfully, another father saw what happened and pulled me out. I hated Dad. I hated that he made me feel like I had personally killed my sisters. I hated that he planted the idea in my head that I could still hear them. Because eventually, I did. Whispers. Two voices inside my mind. While sitting in class, I would hear a whisper. "Hey, Phoebe, tell us a story." I ignored them. At the playground, a ball hit my face and I heard laughter. Then another voice, higher and sharper, said, "Get back at them." I couldn't tell Mom I was hearing the voices of my dead sisters, if they even were them. Mom, she spent most of her time lying in bed, suffering from chronic fatigue and depression. Sometimes it felt like she was starting to believe Dad too. Every time he visited, he would sit beside her bed and rant about his grief. Slowly, it seemed like Mom was being influenced by him, as if she sometimes wished they had lived instead of me. Mom stayed in her room all day with the door locked. She only came downstairs when she thought I was asleep just to grab food. I grew up going to therapy constantly, but sometimes it felt like it never really worked. When I became a teenager, I was filled with anger. I rebelled against my teachers without even knowing why. The voices got louder. The headaches were unbearable. Sometimes I felt like I was going insane. They were always there in my head, suffocating me, so loud that sometimes they drowned out the real world. I started using the names Dad had chosen for them. Yaz and Taz. Maybe because of the guilt. Yaz was quieter. She only spoke when I watched movies. Sometimes she'd say, "Ooh, I like that one." Taz was the reason for my headaches. She would shout, "Phoebe, we're bored." I would cover my ears and squeeze my eyes shut. "Can we play?" They'd ask over and over again. While walking home from school, I'd mutter in my mind, "You're not real." They would laugh. "What if we are?" When I got home, Mom was in bed like always. I peeked in her room. "Mom, do you want some water?" She was sitting upright, staring ahead, her eyes half closed with a faint smile. She hadn't moved, blanket pulled up to her chin. "I'm okay, baby," she whispered. "Go downstairs." Then I noticed the carpet was wet. "Did you spill something?" Her smile widened. Just go downstairs." I went down to cook dinner. I brought it up to her on a tray, spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite. I knocked on the door. "Mom, dinner's ready." Suddenly, Yaz's voice slipped into my mind. "Hey, is that spaghetti?" "I want spaghetti," Taz replied. "Yeah, but she never saves any for me." I ignored them and opened the door when Mom didn't answer. As I stepped inside, my foot landed on something wet. I thought she had spilled something again, but the entire carpet was soaked. I knelt down. The liquid felt warm. "Coffee," I whispered, but Mom only drank water. I looked down at my jeans. Bright red stains. Blood. My eyes shot to the bed. "Mom!" I pulled the blanket back. She was lying on her side, trembling, the pillow and sheets soaked in red. Something long and rope-like was attached to her, moving slightly. I stumbled backward and fell. Something moved beneath the bed. I leaned closer to look. I wish I hadn't. A scream caught in my throat as I scrambled back. On the bed, Mom suddenly giggled. Two bodies were moving in the red liquid. Their heads were fully formed, but they were still attached to each other, still connected to her by an umbilical cord. Slowly, Two pairs of eyes opened. Both stared straight at me. Both smiled. Then the familiar voices echoed in my mind. Hello. So you're here. Can we play now? I couldn't breathe. I sat frozen on the floor, my shaking hand pressed against the wet carpet as warm blood seeped under my palm. Mom kept giggling softly, and between her legs, they moved. Two bodies, small, pale, almost gray. Their bodies were fused from the chest downward, as if their separation had never been finished. But their heads, perfectly clear, two faces, two pairs of eyes, both looking at me, both smiling. One of them moved. Phoebe whispered a high voice. Taz. I backed into the wall. And no, you're not real. The other one laughed softly, like a delighted child. Hey, said the calmer voice. Yes, Taz, you're too loud. Now she saw us. Their bodies shifted. The umbilical cord still attached to Mom tightened like a living rope. Mom winced in pain, but she kept smiling. Mom, I whispered. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her skin was pale like paper. Dark circles hung beneath her eyes, but she was still smiling. They're your sister's sweetheart, she whispered. They were just late coming out. They didn't die. I shook my head. That's impossible. They're dead. The bodies on the bed moved again. Slowly, they crawled out from under the blanket. That's when I saw how complete they were. They had arms. They had fingers. But their fingers were far too long. And their nails looked like tiny needles. They crawled across the bed as if unfamiliar with using their bodies. Then I heard the voice again. Phoebe, said Taz. But now, it wasn't just in my head. It was real, right in front of me. Let's play, Phoebe. I clutched my head. You thought, Yez whispered. We were just your imagination. Suddenly, Mom moved. She grabbed the bed and forced herself upright. That's when I realized why the carpet was soaked. It wasn't just blood. A dark liquid kept dripping from the bed, like rotting water. She breathed heavily. 15 years. She whispered, Mom, what's happening? She looked at me with exhaustion and sadness. They never died. The words rang in my ears. No, your father was right, she said weakly. I turned back to the two creatures. They were crawling faster now. They never disappeared. Tears rolled down Mom's face. I couldn't get them out. Suddenly Taz screamed, Because you chose her. I recoiled. Taz crawled to the edge of the bed. Her nails tapped against the wood. You chose her. Yes, follow more calmly. But it's okay, she said. She smiled wider. Now we're finally complete. Everything rushed back into my mind. The whispers, the laughter, the voices. They weren't coming from my head. They were in the house. All along. Mom took a deep breath. I never get out of bed. She stopped. She stared at her trembling hands. Because when I move, the two bodies crawled off the bed. Their skin made a wet, sticky sound sliding through the blood. They moved too. I coughed as I backed away. Too late. They were already on the floor, and now I could see them clearly. Their bodies were fused together down to the waist. But below that, there was only one pair of legs. Twisted, malformed. They crawled slowly toward me. Phoebe, you said, smiling. Didn't you miss us? I screamed and forced myself to stand. I ran out of the room. Behind me, I heard them crawling. As I ran down the stairs, I heard Mom shout, "Phoebe!" I stopped. She took a deep breath. At least now. She clutched her stomach. I'm not alone anymore. Suddenly, a cold hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed. I looked down. Taz was smiling while clutching my leg. Beside her, Yaz's face was pressed against the floor. She looked up at me and whispered, "Your birthday is over." Slowly she smiled. "Now let's celebrate our birthday." And then I blacked out. It was like someone cut all the noise out of the world. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was two pairs of eyes staring at me, and the cold hand wrapped around my ankle. When I opened my eyes, it was bright. My head throbbed like my skull was being squeezed. My body felt heavy. The air smelled sharp, medicine, antiseptic. And there was noise, voices, footsteps, and the constant wail of a siren outside. That's when I realized I was lying on a stretcher in our living room. Two paramedics leaned over me. "Miss, can you hear us?" I blinked. "Phoebe," one said, reading my ID. "Phoebe, you're awake. You're safe." I tried to sit up. Everything rushed back. The bed. The blood. "Mom, them, M.O.M." I shouted. They helped me up, but immediately held me back. "Ma'am, please relax. Where's my mom?" My voice barely came out. The two paramedics exchanged looks. That was when I felt something was terribly wrong. I pointed upstairs. "She's up there, in her room. You have to help her." One of the female paramedics sighed softly. "Phoebe," she said gently. "We found her in the bed." My world stopped. "She's dead." I couldn't speak. My entire body went cold. She'd been sick for a long time, according to the neighbors, the male paramedic added. "Looks like she hadn't gotten out of bed for quite a while." I shook my head. "No." She moved, she talked to me. I stopped, because suddenly I couldn't remember clearly. I couldn't remember if the room had really been full of blood, if the blanket had really been moving, if the things I saw were real. I closed my eyes as my hands trembled. I heard the doctor speaking again. Possible traumatic episode, severe stress, hallucinations, words I'd heard all my life in therapy. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I looked up at Mom's bedroom window. The house was quiet again. Nothing moved. No knocking, no crawling, no jazz, no tas. But as the ambulance doors closed, I noticed something. Inside my mind, it was completely silent. No whispers, no laughter, no two voices that had followed me since childhood. And that's when I finally understood. Maybe they weren't ghosts. They weren't monsters. They never crawled out of the bed. Maybe they were just the guilt, anger, and pain I carried since the day I was born. And when Mom died, they disappeared with her. 6 years have passed. I live in another city now. I have a job, my own apartment, and I'm still in therapy. Sometimes my therapist asks if I still remember what happened that night. If I'm sure about what I saw, I always answer honestly. I don't know anymore. Sometimes it feels like it was just a nightmare. Other times, it feels too clear to be a dream. But one thing I know for sure, since that night, I've never heard the voices again. No jazz, no tas, no one speaking inside my head. And for the first time in my life, The world is quiet. But every year on my birthday, there's something I do. I don't know why. It feels like instinct. I buy a cake. I place 3 candles on it. And before blowing them out, I pause. I just stare, quietly. Then I blow out all 3 candles at once. One for me, and for my 2 siblings, who I'm no longer sure ever truly disappeared, or if, at last, they finally found their rest. The end.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing Filipino tales, folklore, and true stories from my culture. The Philippines is a land filled with mystery, old beliefs, and stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. Through this channel, I hope I can share a small part of those stories with all of you. If this story gave you chills, or reminded you of something strange that happened in your own life, then maybe the world is more mysterious than we think. If you enjoy Filipino horror stories, folklore, and real paranormal experiences, and you don't mind that these stories are narrated using an AI voice, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. And if you have your own scary experience, something you can't explain, something that still haunts you until today, you can send your story to my Facebook page, Dilaw na Kandila Pinoy Komiks. I read your messages, and some of them may become the next story featured here on this channel. Remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories are not the ones we imagine. Sometimes they are the ones that really happened. This is Sir Sig, and thank you for listening to Dilaw na Kandila Pinoy Komiks. Until the next story, keep the lights low and keep the candle burning.